Two gunmen armed with automatic weapons opened fire outside the Curtis Culwell Centre. The suspects are dead and a police officer has been hurt. There are concerns the gunmen's vehicles may contain explosives.
Starting with the event that happened yesterday, actually started several months ago.
Is that there's always this fine line, between freedom of speech and being intentionally incendiary and provocative.
Intentionally incendiary and provocative by drawing a cartoon. This is the low state of freedom of speech in this country.
If somebody says something about your prophet that you don't like, you want them dead.
Any prophet.
Muhammad, as a matter of fact, was a terrorist, was a warmonger. He beheaded Jewish tribes, and he was one of the guys who participated. I believe that if Muhammad would be alive today, he will be tried and he will be found guilty of terrorism.
Hi, I'm Tom Trento, Executive Director of the United West, and your host today for a very special show recognizing the one-year anniversary of the first Islamic State attack on the United States soil. To understand that properly, we have to go back to January 7th, 2015, on that tragic, horrendous day where ISIS, the Islamic State, attacked the offices of the cartoon company Charlie Hebdo. On a very sad day, we had 16 people killed and 22 wounded, actually over 3 days. The attack started at the offices of Charlie Hebdo, the cartoon company, and then culminated at a Jewish delicatessen in Paris, France. Then just 10 days later, on the 17th of January, here in the United States, at the Curtis Culwell Convention Center in Garland, Texas, a group of Muslims, many of whom were associated with Islamic terrorism, formed a conference entitled Stand with the Prophet. Well, Pamela Geller, our dear friend and a counter-jihad fighter extraordinaire, wanted to protest an event in the United States that honored the Prophet Muhammad just a few days after the destruction and disaster in Paris. So she organized a protest of 2,000 people against the honoring of the Prophet Muhammad and the suppression of free speech. In fact, she wanted to enter the conference and was denied entrance. So then she decided to hold her own conference at that very same convention center, the Curtis Culwell Center in Garland, Texas. She organized that for May 3rd, 2015. And as we all know, on that day, ISIS, the Islamic State, two jihadis attacked our conference. The United West was in there live streaming the Mohammed art exhibit and contest. 2 dead, 2 jihadis dead, 1 police officer injured. To get an inside understanding, 1 year removed of that event, please welcome Pamela Geller. Well, it's been a year, and you had a phenomenal event, and we were together. Our team was live streaming when the attack went down. A year removed now, I know you've been through a tremendous amount. What are your reflections on what took place when you were inside and knew Islamic Muslim jihadis were trying to kill you and everybody else in there?
Well, I thought that the war on our freedoms came to the homeland, and it had. And in the wake of Garland, you see the spike in jihadi attacks in this country. Just a few short months later, in Chattanooga, where they slaughtered 5 of our soldiers, the jihadi said the war has begun and there's more to come. And he was right. And you have to say, what have we learned? What has America learned in the wake of Garland? This is the first anniversary of an ISIS attack on American soil. And I say that we've learned nothing. I mean, for my colleagues and I, everything changed. The personal toll has been, it's been enormous. It's affected our lives, it's affected our careers in innumerable ways, all of which were negative. The security costs are now astronomical. We can't step outside without remembering that we are hunted. And at any time, jihadis could strike us, like that Boston plot to behead me, that in the wake of Garland. And yet, Tom, in spite of all this, we are cast as the villains. I'm sure people remember how an imam, I think you interviewed him, Imam Anjem Chowdhury in the UK, called for my execution on Sean Hannity's show. Political figures like Carly Fiorina and even Donald Trump excoriated us. Fox News host Martha McCallum said I should respect Islam and contain myself. Bill O'Reilly said I spurred the violence. They are adhering to Islamic law. I mean, do they think it's going to stop there? Like, oh, just don't draw Muhammad? Or, as we have seen continually, accommodation to Islamic law gives way to more demands for accommodation. And I think what's happening in this country is very frightening. I don't worry so much about the fanaticism of the enemy. I worry about the confusion on our side.
All right, well, along those lines, what do you think has to happen in the United States of America? We're not talking about Europe or anywhere else. Right now, the United States of America. What do you think has to happen for us to defeat the Islamic State jihadis here in the homeland?
Well, first and foremost, we have to recognize and articulate the enemy. We have to recognize that it is the jihadic doctrine, that it is the Sharia that is in conflict with our freedoms and this country. And of course, the Obama administration and the leftist elites and academia have all scrubbed Islam from this narrative. And anyone that uses the term or highlights, tries to create awareness about the jihadic doctrine and the brutal and extreme ideology of the Sharia is smeared as a racist, Islamophobic, anti-Muslim bigot. So first, there has to be the ability to speak of it. There's a problem in Islam. And the problem is we can't talk about the problem. We have to stop proselytizing for Islam in the public schools. We're disarming our children. We have to, just like back in the day where the left whines about the McCarthy era, even though those people actually worked, okay, there's a blacklist on myself and my colleagues. You don't see us on college campuses anymore, but you see Islamic supremacists, you see Reza Aslan, you see hate preachers, you see the SJP. They have become war zones, and pro-Israel, pro-freedom students are under constant attack if they dare speak out. So it's not just one thing. The left has America in a chokehold, and there is a leftist Islamic alliance, and it must be broken. It must be shaken to its very core. Look, San Bernardino should not have happened. We know that there was the connection to Garland, that there was an ISIS operative who was in touch with both. After Garland, that ISIS operative should have been apprehended, should have been put in jail, not been free to incite further violence. And again, this is what we know in the wake of Garland. We know that the jihadis in Garland were instructed by a senior ISIS operative. We know that they were plotting a jihadi attack a year prior to our announcement. They were training, they were shooting, they were meeting, they were plotting. So if we hadn't had our art exhibit, what would they have hit? It would have been another San Bernardino. It would have been another Chattanooga. The only difference is that our event, we know what we're dealing with, and we were armed, and we were ready for them, and we had the very best of outcomes.
And those two guys are dead, and sadly, there's many more who will step up and gladly take their place as they believe they're moving to paradise with all the rewards. But as people are watching you right now, they see you as a very articulate, very brave woman who has taken a stand on free speech issues in the United States. But by your own admission, you're paying dearly with a more restricted lifestyle. But some of these people watching, Pamela, are on the edge. They want to get involved, but then they see, do I want my life to be impacted like Pamela? What words do you have for those Americans who do want to take a step in, get in the fight, but are wavering a little right now?
You have no choice. you are already in the crosshairs. A South Florida synagogue was a terror plot was just thwarted, just day before yesterday. Aventura Synagogue. Everyone is in the crosshairs. There are no casual observers. There are no bystanders in the war on freedom. And as afraid as they may be of doing something, they should be more afraid of doing nothing. Yes, I pay a steep price, but I would pay a steeper price if I were silent. And my children would certainly, and grandchildren would certainly pay the steepest price. And that's how people have to understand this. You can't get away from this. There's no getting away from this. Look, ISIS just released a list of 3,600 names, New York names as targets. One was a dog walker, for goodness sake. Nobody, if you are an infidel, if you are a kuffar, if you're not a devout Muslim, if you're a secular Muslim, you are in the crosshairs, and they're getting stronger every day with the alliance and the aid and the sanction of the left and the Obama administration, and these new policies of importing hundreds of thousands of refugees. That's what Obama has plans. Unvetted. I mean, they're not distinguishing between peaceful Muslims and jihadis. You ain't seen nothing yet. I've seen the future, brother, and it's murder.
All right, Pamela Geller, thank you very much for being with us on this special about the Garland attack, something you organized, put together, bravely so. We appreciate it, and we stand with you, and you stay safe, okay?
Thank you for everything, Tom.
Right. Wow, that's a very sobering thought by Pamela Geller. The future is murder. Well, our next guest, an individual who has been warning the world about the future of the Islamization of Europe, of America, in fact, of the globe, is a parliamentarian from the Netherlands. He's the head of the Party for Freedom and a great counter-jihad fighter, the keynote speaker at the event in Garland, Texas on May 3rd, 2015. Please welcome Mr. Geert Wilders. Hello, Mr. Wilders. Great to have you with us. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm very proud to be your guest again.
Well, we go back a long ways, and just about a year ago, we were together in Garland, Texas at Pamela Geller's Mohammed cartoon and art exhibit. And unfortunately, there was a terrorist attack, as you well know. I'd like our folks in the audience to understand your thinking. You had just spoken, you left with your security detail, and shortly after, all of us who were there, my team and I were live streaming, we came under attack by 2 Islamic State jihadis. Where were you when you first heard this, and what were your thoughts?
Well, as you said, I just left. I just presented, together with Pamela Geller, the check to Bosch Fawstin, the winner of this cartoon contest, and I had a short speech, and then I thanked the audience and I left, and I was just with my security detail on the way to my hotel, and then I guess it was a few minutes later we heard that something was happened, and they took me even faster to the hotel in the neighborhood, and I heard what happened, and it was really incredible. It was an attack on freedom, an attack on freedom of speech, an attack on the United States, and of all places, who would have expected last year that in Garland, Texas, such an attack by 2 Islamic thugs, because that's what they were, happened. Luckily, and they were killed, and nobody else was hurt, but it was shocking, of course, that in Texas, in the United States, such a thing happened. Then again, this is what Islam stands for. It's the total opposite of freedom of speech. It's the fact that they want to silence us, and I think whole America, even Texas, saw what Islam really stood for that day exactly 1 year ago.
Yeah, and we know now, a year removed, that this was not just 2 guys that came up with an idea. This was a cell. In fact, one of their handlers was recently convicted here in the United States of managing them. There were hackers involved coming out of out of Pakistan, so it was much bigger. And obviously you were one of, if not the prime targets, but they hate all of us. They hate everyone who expresses free speech issues. Mr. Wilders, how can we here in the United States defeat Islamic jihadis who are continuing to plan and implement attacks like this?
Yeah, well, first let me say, Tom, that indeed we are all victims today. We are all potential targets. It's not only you or me or Pamela Geller or Bosch Fawstin, the cartoonist. We are all. They aim at us all. We are all unsafe today because our leaders, the advocates of multiculturalism, of cultural relativism, see Islam still today, as your own president does, as one of the guys, one of the religions that is not so different as anything else. Even your own president, Mr. Obama, today even states that it's not Islam that's the problems, it's certain Muslims that are the problems. And I believe that the only thing that we should do today is to de-Islamize our authorities. It's time to end up being tolerant to the ideology of intolerance. People who are intolerant to us, an ideology that is intolerant to us should only be met with an intolerant society as well. So I believe that Islam has no place in our society, that we should finally wake up and say no to Islamic immigration and say yes to the voluntary repatriation of Islamic inhabitants of our countries. And if they are criminal, we should extradite them involuntarily. We should stop the building of new mosques, even shut down the existing mosques. We should stop with every symbolism of Islam, for once again, we are being invaded. Those are colonists instead of immigrants. And the biggest threat, once again, is not only the people that are coming to our societies, at least a certain part of them, but is our governments that fail to act and keep us safe by talking about the political correct mantra that all cultures are the same and that Islam is not really a threat and that it's misused by just a few. This is all nonsense. We should stay safe, our children should stay safe, and we should do one thing, and that is de-Islamize our free societies in order to stay free.
Speaking about governments, we know that your Party for Freedom has grown significantly through the years, and there may be a possibility someday you could be the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. But we also know some in your government do not like you. They've moved again to indict you on charges of hate speech and all this nonsense. We know you were before them. You have a trial, I think, later this year. What's the status of that next nonsensical trial against you?
Yeah, well, it's very sad indeed, you know. In the political parliament here in the Netherlands, they are unable to beat me. And we are today, as the Party for Freedom in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, by far, in all the polls for months already, the #1 party. We are even bigger than the two governing coalition parties combined. And of course, it's also because everything that is happening around here in Western Europe. You saw the attacks in Brussels. You saw what happened twice last year in France. And still our governments are looking in the other direction and are doing exactly nothing. And the people are fed up with it. That is the good news. The people are wakening up. You see a kind of political revolution all over Europe. You see it in Germany, in France, in Austria. You see everywhere parties like mine that they are gaining ground and becoming perhaps even the biggest in the next coming elections. Unfortunately, the political elite wants to silence me, and since they are not able to do that in Parliament, they are again taking me to court for saying something that I believe almost every Dutchman believes that we should have. That's what I asked my audience a few years ago. Do you want more or less Europe? Do you want more or less socialists? And do you want more or less Moroccans that are by far the #1 people going to fight for ISIS in Syria? So still, they are trying to do that. Unfortunately, later this year, both in May and in October and November, there will be a court trial again. And well, I'm not very surprised about that, but I will tell you one thing. Whatever terrorists like ISIS and Al-Qaeda threaten me, whenever people call me crazy things. Whenever governments take me to court, they will not succeed. I will not be silenced. And at the end of the day, my party and myself will only become stronger.
Mr. Wilders, there are people listening right now, and they look at you and see your courage, and they want to get involved, but they're just a little hesitant or frightened. What words do you have for them to have them take that step and get involved in saving Western civilization?
Well, what I want to tell them is this is really the moment. It's perhaps our last chance to get up and make sure that the people win. And everybody who believes that Christianity, Judaism, humanism is what we are, is what we belong to, is what we adhere to, is what our identity and our culture is, and not Islam, that Islam has really no place in our free society. I tell those people, if you don't do it for yourself, and I'm sure you want to do it for yourself, then at least do it for your children, do it for the freedom of your country. And for me, America, the American people, I have a lot of problems with the current American administration, but I'm a big friend of the American people, and America stands for freedom. And please show the world that you still stand for freedom. And freedom and Islam are incompatible. So support yourself, support us, and make sure that Islam gets out of our societies.
Mr. Wilders, thank you very much for your time with us today, and you stay safe, okay?
My pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much.
Some may believe that those are harsh words to take Islam out of Western civilization, but if you read the scholars of Islam, the Islamic scholars and leaders, they will tell you definitively that Islam, doctrinal Islam, is incompatible with Western civilization on a whole variety of doctrinal metrics. And our next special guest, someone who has written extensively, 15 books, many of which are on this subject. He is a compatriot and colleague of Pamela Geller, helping her with her various organizations. He's the director of Jihad Watch, a dear friend of ours, and was in the center of the Garland attack 2015. Please welcome Robert Spencer. Hi, Robert. How are you today?
Very well, Thomas. How are you?
I'm doing good, and we're coming up on that one-year anniversary where we were together with Pamela and Geert and many others, an unfortunate situation. Tell us what it was like for you personally to be in that room when we came under attack by the Islamic State terrorists.
You know, Tom, it all unfolded so quickly and unexpectedly. I guess the main thing is that I was grateful that we had spent so much money to have so much security around the building so that the people who came to the event were safe. And Pamela and I were taken immediately to a safe room where we stayed for several hours, and people were coming in and out and telling us what had happened. We pieced it together as time went on. And it's clear, it just brought it home to me that all that we were saying was absolutely true, that the freedom of speech is under attack, that we need to protect it, that we need to stand up to violent intimidation, or we're only going to get more violent intimidation. And the harrowing events of that night only prove all that to be correct.
Now, Robert, it's been a year, and you can come clean, because I heard through the grapevine that your safe room was the men's room at the convention center.
Yes, it was. Yes,
it really was.
Yep, it was. It was a pretty large one though, and there were 4 or 5 of us in there for a while, and then Pamela and I with just one of our security people, and there was it was not an uncomfortable situation. I mean, obviously you don't want to hang around in a men's room for 3 hours. I mean, unless you might have some strange inclinations. But otherwise, it was fine. And it was a testimony to our security team. They were taking care of us. They were taking care of the people who came to the event. They were not letting us venture out until they made sure that the area was secure, that there weren't any other jihadis waiting along the road, and that we would be able to get back to the hotel safely, and we did.
Yeah, I know our team, the United West team, when we were brought into the main area, we started looking for you guys to make sure you guys were okay, and we knew you had a good detail, and we could see a bunch of people on the perimeter of the bathroom, and they said they're in there. We said, okay, they're safe and sound. That's good. My my other question, since then we had San Bernardino, May 3rd, our attack, San Bernardino subsequent to that. Robert Spencer, you are one of the most distinguished and knowledgeable people on Islamic Jihad in the world. How do we defeat Islamic Jihad in the United States of America?
Well, in the first place, we have to stop importing jihadis. And whatever you think of Donald Trump, and of course Donald Trump condemned us after the free speech event in Garland, which shows he has no clue about the freedom of speech and the need to protect it. So I'm not endorsing him, but he was right when he said that Muslim immigration needs to be temporarily halted until we can figure out some way to distinguish peaceful Muslims from jihadis. Of course, there is no way to do that, especially since the Islamic State has instructed its people to appear to be moderate and secular and get into the United States that way. So there needs to be a moratorium on Muslim immigration, period. Plus a reconfiguration of our alliances internationally so that we're not giving billions of dollars to Pakistan, that they are just funneling to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. We need to call upon American Muslim groups to institute honest, transparent, inspectable programs that teach against the understanding of Islam that Al-Qaeda and ISIS foster. They say they condemn it, but they're not doing a thing to stop its spread in the United States. That has to end. Okay,
Robert Spencer, I hope the next time we meet nobody's shooting at us, and we wish you the best with your new book, The Expose, Infidel's Guide to Iran.
Yes, it'll be out at any self-respecting bookstore in July.
In July. Thank you very much. Robert Spencer,
Thank you.
Safe. Stay safe.
You too.
Look, I know some of you watching may think it's very harsh and even hateful to even consider stopping the Islamization in the United States of America. Well, you've heard from Pamela Geller, you've heard from Geert Wilders, you've heard from Robert Spencer on this subject. Now we're going to turn to a former Muslim, someone who has written extensively in many genres, an artist extraordinaire, and the individual who won the primary award at the Mohammed Art Exhibit and Contest in Garland, Texas, May of 2015. And I want to welcome Bosch Fawstin to the show, and I want to ask you, Bosch, is it possible to stop the Islamization, particularly the Islamic Jihad Islamization, here in the United States of America?
Hey Tom, glad to be here. How do we stop that? Basically, the way I see it in terms of, I'm not a military guy, I don't know on that aspect, even though I have some ideas, but stop lying about Islam. Stop saying it means peace. Stop saying it's benign. Stop saying it's good in any way whatsoever, and start telling the truth. That's how you really begin to stop this, because it's the lies that have been pushed by Bush, by Obama, by both administrations post 9/11, by our media, by Washington at large, by politicians in general, even the alleged tough guy politicians like Trump, who basically condemned the Garland. He condemned us would-be victims before he condemned any of the perpetrators of the attack. So yeah, stop lying, first thing, and then start finding out what Islam means, what it actually, what it pushes its most devout followers to do, and start telling the truth. That's how you begin to stop this, and then through that, acting on the truth from politicians who are in charge of power, sent to our military, who can actually understand what they're facing without being thrown into the Middle East with their hands tied behind their back, without any knowledge, being told Islam means peace and go kill them. Kill who, where, what, how, what. So that's the first thing, I think. Just stop lying and then tell the truth.
All right, you were not only at the Curtis Caldwell Convention Center on May 3rd, 2015, you won the contest with your very articulate and specific drawing. When the attack occurred, and I've asked Pamela and Robert and Geert Wilders, what were your feelings, your thoughts? Reflect for our audience a bit on that moment that you realized we were under attack.
Sure. I had just did my speech where I mentioned, I said, why do we have this kind of security? And I said, because Islam does not mean peace. So despite the fact that I knew that there was great security, we were really protected pretty well. There's a possibility that these guys might pull something. So when they actually did, when I was actually told there's an attack going on, it was to be expected and also surreal to some extent, because you're like, you know these guys are coming, but when you're in the middle of it, it's a whole different story. You can read about these attacks and they're terrible, but when you're in the middle of it, it's like, what else is going to happen there? Are they going to bomb this place? Because we don't know at that point. So I was in the middle of an interview with a guy from the media, and I was talking about my cartoon, and I was oblivious. I think you were on the television at a point. You were actually telling the audience what was happening. At least I think you just found out. And my friend had to walk up, and I had a flight because I want to fly in and fly out in a certain amount of hours. I had a flight, and he told me, we're under attack. I said, I have a flight to catch. It was, we're under attack. And I said, of course. I was not quite there. I was wanting to get back home. And then they took us in the back area, and some of the security guards recognized me as the winner, and they took me aside, and we were talking, and couldn't get any phone access. I couldn't call anyone to let them know how I was doing. And then after a little while, I think one of the security guards told me that a cop had blown the heads off of the scumbags. And as I mentioned before, I just had a big pump fist. I was like, yes! And I did tweet that thing. I said, they came to kill us and died for justice. And as I put it, I said, the only people who died that night were those coming to kill. So on that aspect, that was the best part of the night. Scumbags got what they deserved. And that cop, I mean, it's real. I wanted to draw him. I wanted to send something to him. And of course, I think they've hidden his name, which is understandable. But he's a hero. He's doing his job, and it's not his job necessarily to blow the heads off of two scumbag terrorists who are at war with us. But he sure as hell did it, and it was pretty incredible. And then, a few hours went by, I believe, and we were taken by the security guards around town. We went in circles. We had to go in a roundabout kind of way to protect us. So it was a strange, incredible night, unforgettable night. I mean, we almost died that night, all of us there. You, everyone there, was about 200 people. Yeah. For what? Yep. For what? For an art exhibit? For drawing a cartoon? And that's why I continue drawing Muhammad. I've drawn him 60 or 70 times since Garland. And I'm going to keep drawing him. This is what we do. You got to obliterate the idea that you can be killed for drawing cartoons out of this world. And how you do that? By keep drawing them, keep resisting them, keep defying them, and killing them, of course. But that's how you do it. You just and that was my cartoon. You can't draw me. That's why I draw you. I never set out to draw Muhammad until people were being threatened and killed over it. So yeah, that night was, however, insane, and it's a special night though. It really is, because it's we were there defending free speech, defending our freedoms with heroic people, and we all came out of it alive, which was great.
It was indeed. And you have a distinguished career as an artist and a provocateur, some may say, with your Pigman book. But you're a free speech proponent like us, like Pamela, like Geert, like Robert, and many others. And I think in the past year, many people have moved more closely to getting deeply involved in this counter-jihad fight and standing for American principles and standing for free speech, but they're not quite there. Right. They don't have the courage that you have. What words do you have for those watching us now who want to get involved but are just scared?
Just read. Read as much as you possibly can. Arm yourself with the knowledge that you need in order to argue against this enemy, against this evil. No, because with that you have the kind of confidence that you don't have otherwise. I mean, I studied Islam as if my life depended on it. Post 9/11, I was raised Muslim. We were pretty passive, but except for the Jew hatred and the wife beating and the misogyny. Hitler was admired in my family because he killed more Jews than anyone. So that's a kind of evil. And you just got to appreciate the fact that it poisons everyone in its wake. I don't care. Yes, everyone knows decent Muslims and whatnot, but once they take their religion seriously, they're going to be violent. They're going to be dangerous to us. So understand. Read Robert Spencer's book, his blog, Pamela's blog. Read as much as you can. Understand the truth about what we're facing, inside and out, if you really want to get involved. and then you can tell it with confidence. You can understand it. You can tell other people. You can direct other people in how they can learn how to do it, and just tell the truth again and again and again, because that, in the end, the truth will save us, and acting on the truth will ultimately save us and defeat this enemy.
You made a very, very good point that our critique is on Islamic doctrine, that an individual, a human being, can be a very nice person, can be a Muslim, be a nice person, but until he starts following Islamic teaching, Quranic doctrine, the Hadith, the Sunnah, these things, then their life is directed toward death and destruction, sadly. So, Bosch, we thank you for doing the work you're doing. Keep it up. You stay safe, and we're here for you always.
I appreciate it, Tom. Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. The 4 principles at the Curtis Caldwell Convention Center, May 3rd, 2015, the first attack by ISIS on American soil. And we were wondering if America has learned anything in this past year regarding Islamic Jihad, regarding the Islamization of the United States. And we want to graphically illustrate the problem that is seen in this next piece of footage. It's a debate between Chris Cuomo, one of the reporters and hosts on CNN, and Pamela Geller just a few days after the attack. Check this out.
The criticism is that what you did, you knew would be very provocative. Your keynote speaker is an outspoken and provocative person who is obviously an Islamophobe. So that was something that you knew would draw negative attention, and then you got negative attention.
Anyone that opposes jihad terror and Sharia is an Islamophobe. That's what you're saying.
No, he is an Islamophobe. He is a known and documented person who says ugly things about all Islam. I'm not saying you're that, but you chose him as your speaker.
I chose him as my speaker. We were targeted for slaughter. Hundreds of people standing in defense of freedom of speech were targeted for slaughter. And ever since that time, the media has been attacking me.
Why do people say it's offensive? Why do they not do it? They say culturally they believe you don't do this.
No, they're trying to impose the Sharia. And you're adhering to it.
It's not in just Sharia. It's not the way it is.
That's exactly what it is.
It's that we see it as being offensive. That's why we don't use any derisive comments about people.
I'm not a Muslim. I don't adhere to Sharia law. I don't see it as being offensive.
And you don't see that as what you're doing with the Prophet Muhammad?
No. It's political opinion. The cartoon says, there's a picture of Muhammad saying, you can't draw me, and there's the artist's hand saying, that's why I draw you. And it was drawn by a former Muslim, Bosch Fawstin. You don't even see that you have succumbed to this.
No, I don't see that.
I know.
I don't see that. We don't do it because we see no purpose in doing it that is positive and progressive. It's not out of fear. Okay.
Free speech is very positive, very progressive.
I do think, we'll end this part of the discussion here.
And where are you going to draw the line, Chris?
I understand that. That is a subjective distinction, but it's not about whether you have the right.
When they don't want you to eat during Ramadan in the CNN cafeteria, you're not going to eat during Ramadan? Because we see that in Europe. When they want you girls to wear longer skirts, are you going to draw it there?
I understand that you see it as a slippery slope.
Where are you going to draw the line? You're saying no cartoons. That, to me, is so much more destructive to a free society than alcohol. It's free speech.
Understood.
It's a cartoon, Chris. Snap out of it.
Snap out of it, Chris. What a beautiful metaphor to bring our special show to a culmination, leaving you with a critical thought. Since the attack in Garland on May 3rd, 2015, the Islamic State has expanded its mission of death and destruction worldwide. And even here in the United States, we saw on December 2nd, right here again in the homeland, an attack in San Bernardino by Islamic jihadis. And we've seen the increase in beheadings globally by the Islamic State. We've seen the establishment to a greater degree of the Islamic State procuring land and starting a financial system and schooling and hospitals and all of that, and developing a more sophisticated army. And we've seen the exporting of this army, seasoned veterans of the combat field, using migration and the concept of immigration to go throughout Europe and here in the United States. So we ask all Americans and all of America, have you snapped out? Have you snapped out of your infatuation with Islam as a religion of peace, as opposed to true doctrinal Islam? true doctrinal Islam, though it has a religious veneer primarily, is a totalitarian, supremacist system, political system with an apocalyptic worldview that necessitates its complete control and domination of the whole world, including, there is no separation of the United States from the world from the caliphate's point of view, including the complete control and domination of the United States of America, formerly, the land of the free and the home of the brave.